Good afternoon. This is Jason Flame, host of the Master Motivation Podcast. And you know what happens when you get a bunch of martial artists in the same room and you haven't seen each other in a little while? We tend to talk a little bit. And so we're a little over time today, but I've got a great group of people that have joined us today. I've got Mr. Robby Beard. I've got John Hackleman. I've got Pat Miletich, and I have Ricardo Liborio. Welcome to the show, guys, and thanks for being here and spending some time with me. And we're going to just kind of kick it off and let everybody introduce themselves. And then from there, we're going to go around the table and ask questions. Looks like, Robby, are you having trouble with your – he's not hearing me. Try to figure that out. But listen, let's have John Hackleman. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is John Hackleman. Some people call me Pitmaster. I'm a karate guy, and I teach people how to keep their lunch money pretty much. That's it in a nutshell. That's all I care about. That's not all I care about, but that's my main focus in life, you know, having people keep their lunch money and not, you know, let anyone else take it. And that's what I think of when I wake up in the morning, and I think of when I go to sleep at night. Well, there's a couple other things. And I do love jiu-jitsu on the side. Anyway.
All right, we'll get to more of that. Mr. Liborio, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. Guys, thank you for having me here. It's so good to see these old guys. It's awesome. My name is Ricardo Liborio. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. And, you know, I teach people how to keep their lunch money, too. but I love karate, in exception with y'all, my friend over there, you know. So it's good to be here. All legends. I don't know what happened to Robby. Robby dropped us.
You know what? He was having trouble with his camera, I think, or with his microphone. So he'll be back. I'll jump him back in. Pat Miletich, take a minute to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, just Iowa native. Grew up wrestling my entire life. Done a lot of boxing, a lot of kickboxing, a lot of jiu-jitsu, Russian sambo. Got 4th degree black belt karate, all that good stuff. I guess for me, I tried to find all of the strong points in a lot of different martial arts and combine them into one art that made sense for combat, and that is the Miletich fighting systems.
Well, again, thank you guys all for being here. I think the word legend does ring true with the three of you. It was definitely a decision that I made, that I wanted to highlight some amazing coaches, and you guys have had, you know, a lot of experience in the cage, in the octagon, in the ring. And so the first question I want to ask is, what is your greatest success as a coach? What is your greatest success as a coach? Mr. Liborio, what would you say is your greatest success as a coach?
Well, that's just as hard to say, you know, biggest success as a coach. I think things that really impactful were very impactful to my life is to see some of the coaches, but some of the personal friends winning. I was there when Murillo Bustamante was a guy I grew up with. We grew up together. You know, we're teammates since we're teenagers. So we grow up in Carlson Gracie team in Brazil, and see him being, you know, a UFC champion was very strong. You know, we're also invested. This is one of the dear friends that's still to my, you know, into my old times. It was very, very important for me to see him succeed like that. So one thing is stand out, and I've been in a corner like Pat, like John, and many other championships, and I think that for me, which is stand out, was when Bustamante really won the UFC title. It was something that really, it was so impactful, you know. It was such a good moment. So I really remember this all the time. You know?
All right. How about for you, Pat? What do you think is your greatest success as a coach?
Well, I mean, besides, you know, I think we last count that I remember. I mean, I retired from coaching for quite a while ago, but putting 95 kids into televised careers and over a dozen world champions, and but most of all, to be honest with you, is when somebody walks up to me who's an adult and they have their family, and they say something like, and it happens to me quite often still, hey, do you remember me? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And you taught me when I was a kid, and I just wanted to thank you for helping me gain my confidence in life. And I want to introduce you to my wife or my husband, and these are my kids, and things like that. And so that's really probably the biggest accomplishment is all the kids that I trained over all the years who have gained something positive from the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as coaches, when we're able to transform someone's life and have a breakthrough in their life, whether it's that 3-year-old for me that's like listening for the first time and sitting up straight and paying attention, to the 60-year-old that finally can touch their toes, or it's the little things like that that really kind of for them change their life and give them a whole new perspective. So we have such a huge responsibility as coaches and as mentors and instructors, and I know that none of us take that lightly, because the changes that we make, it changes their life literally for the rest of their life when we make those breakthroughs. So, John, what's your greatest success as a coach?
Man, it's like it teeters on like watching somebody come to my gym for the first time and want to learn martial arts because we're a belted martial arts system, and then want to fight, and then next thing you know, he's fighting for a title and going to Japan, and that's great, and that makes me feel proud. I got to take people from the bottom to the top. But also, like when somebody comes in your gym at like 5 years old, and then they invite you. Next thing you know, they're inviting you to their graduation of their police academy, and now they're a cop.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I go both back and forth. I'm not just like Pat. I'm retired from training fighters, but just watching the transformation of people that they go from the first time they walk in the gym till you look at them as an adult, and you just realize nobody's ever going to take that person's lunch money, and you might have had something to do with that. So that's probably my biggest one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I know you very well too, John, and the fact, and all of us, when we have someone come into our lives and we start training them and we start working with them, it becomes more than that relationship on the mat. You really care about what they're doing in their life as well. So I mean, when you're training champions in the ring, you're training champions for life as well. Whether it's not taking their lunch money or just kids getting good grades in school. A student graduating from the police academy. I just had a student who has been with me since he was literally born. His brothers trained before he did, and he just got his very first career. And I just like being a part of that, and knowing that you kind of helped in some small way in being part of their success, going on to start a career, graduate college, and all of that. I think that's something to be said about great coaches too. Next question would be your philosophy as a coach. When you run your camp, when you run, your fighters through your camps, what's the main philosophy and the culture that you create when you're training? Mr. Miletich.
It's honestly, it's the mentality of, I didn't grow up idolizing athletes really at all. Even though I loved sports, I loved playing sports, but Dan Gable was really the one guy that I, wanted to emulate because of his work ethic. I read every book about him, watched every documentary. That was a guy that was put on ankle weights and would run from class to class around Iowa State University, tortured his wrestling teams, could beat everybody on his team into his 40s. And so my mentality was to obviously have very good fundamentals and be in such good shape that you're not going to ever run out of gas, that the training was far harder than any fight could ever be, because and there's one thing that I already had that mentality, but I was a special guest at a kickboxing event in Chicago when I held the UFC title, and a kid died during that event. I was in the ring giving him CPR with volunteer firemen. and we were not able to save him. His heart literally blew up. He turned blue in a matter of a minute. But I never wanted to have to explain to somebody's wife or parents why their loved one got hurt in a fight. So I weeded everybody out as much as I could by making the training so torturously hard that we were never going to run that risk of severe injury for the most part while fighting in the cage. And that's was my mentality, is that we were going to get rid of the people that didn't belong. Period. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way that I ran things.
Mr. Liborio, how about you? Uh-oh. He'll be back. How about Mr. Hackleman?
Okay. What's the question?
The question was your philosophy in training your fighters when you're running your camps. I know you're retired now, but I've watched you train your fighters. What's going on through your mind as you're heading into a camp and preparing the fighters for a big fight?
I think to be honest, a lot of it had to do with conditioning. I was, everything from the whole wheelbarrow thing. We're known for a lot of our hardcore conditioning. I think people like Pat, they have that wrestling mentality. I never wrestled. I boxed throughout high school. That was my sport. I was fighting the Golden Gloves every year, and I was known as the athlete at high school, but I never played a high school sport. I never wrestled. But I made conditioning a very important part of our training. I got some of that from the Army. Some of it from old school Kachikempo training back when I was a kid. But I always wanted them to be put in the worst positions when they're the most tired. Like rowing someone for 500 meters, in like a minute and a half, and then putting them on the bottom and putting a fresh guy on top of them, and they got to escape, and so I tried to think of ways to make them as tired as I could by doing something neutral, because when people say, well, I wrestle myself into shape, or I jiu-jitsu myself into shape, or I spar myself into shape, those are the people that are always getting hurt. Because if you go that hard all the time with contact, there's going to be injuries. So I did something neutral, like rowing or burpees or something, make them tired anaerobically, to the max, and then make them tired. And the only other strategy, the only other philosophy I would have would be to try to find the other person's main strengths and try to thwart that with ours, and if they had a weakness, then capitalize on that. So I don't know. Mm-hmm. I guess that's it. That was a long answer, man.
That was
a long, boring answer.
Hey, well, Mr. Robby Beard is back. Can you hear us okay?
I'm back. I don't know what happened. Aliens.
Aliens. So the question, and we were talking a little bit about, and I want to get your feedback on this first. So I'm going to ask you two questions. What has been your greatest success as a coach? And when I say as a coach, in any regard, whether you're talking about working with a 3-year-old, you're working with a 6-year-old, where you're working with a client, what has been your greatest success as a coach?
Wow, I've had fortunately to have some big successes with that, in that regard. And I think to keep the answer as simple as I can is having these people finally believe in themselves, right? To see them blossom into the fighter that maybe as a coach that we see. Like I see the skill set that this person has, but they don't see that skill set. And for me to better bring that to their front of their brain, where they're like, you know what, I can beat this other man or this other woman or whatever the case is across the ring from me. To have them develop that confidence and see that, and then be a little older. Like I heard someone else talk about earlier, when these people become an adult, they're using the same skills or confidence. I just think that's probably, I know it's probably a boring answer, but I think just watching someone come in with no skill, but now mentally have that skill to perform.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, it's a great answer. I mean, we're talking about all levels and all walks of life. So I think that's a great answer. As martial artists, in general, that's what we need to see happen almost first, is to build that confidence in their skills and believe in themselves, because they're not getting in the ring, they're not getting on the mat, they're not getting into competition without that level of confidence and without that, the rigorous training that the other two were talking about. Now I'm going to come back. Mr. Liborio is back, so I'll come back to you, sir, in just a second. But Robby, the second question was your philosophy and your methods of training. If you're training someone for competition, training someone for the ring, training someone for a big, a big fight, what is your philosophy and what are your methods?
Well, I think the thing that worked for me when I was a competitor and now passed along is I like to duplicate the scenario that they're going to be in, right? So we're going to fight, we're going to practice in a cage, for example. We're going to practice in a boxing ring. We're going to practice in that environment. And I would be even as silly to hold practices if we're fighting Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Then that's when we're going to have practices. It's Friday night or Saturday night at 7 o'clock, right? I wanted your body to be in the same mindset that's going to be there. If there's music there, we're playing music, whatever. I want to duplicate that. If there's referees, I would literally create miniature the event, right, in a miniature form, so they could get as much experience in that uncomfortable environment. Because a lot of times, we see this a lot. At least I've seen this a lot. I remember when I was a competitor and I would go do seminars at schools and be fighting with people and go, holy crap, who is that guy? He's awesome. I'm glad he's not competing, right? And it's like, so sometimes it's not always about the fighting skill as much as it being comfortable in that environment to walk out. I've walked out a lot of times to that ring, the crowd, the music, that's a lot of energy and a lot of adrenaline. So I always try to get them to duplicate that as much as I could. I wanted that adrenaline dump. I wanted that to be a big part of the thing. At the same time, like we've already talked about, is key. And then Hackleman said the same thing. It's like, I need them to be confident when they go, and I don't want them hurt. I don't want them beat up. I don't want it to be so hard that they're losing all the training up to the fight. Their sparring partners are beating the hell out of them. I got an opportunity to train with Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield back in the day, and just watching them train, it wasn't they weren't their sparring partners. They weren't in there beating the hell out of each other, right? They've set up drills and they're working counters and they're putting the plan together. And then probably the last thing is that of course I agree with what everybody else did. I'm just trying to add something different. Is visualization. I'm a big visualization person. Where are we fighting? What's that arena looking like? Get there early. I want you to feel comfortable there. So a lot of those things are some of the techniques I like to use to get these guys ready for a big fight, for sure.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Great stuff. I know a lot of you have had fighters that have fought outside the country or just different time zones, and getting used to that different time zone can be a factor, I believe. So
100%.
Ricardo Liborio.
Altitudes, right?
Yeah.
Just different parts of the country. You fighting in Denver's different than fighting in Miami, for example.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Liborio, the question was your philosophy of your training camps, working with your fighters. What are you trying to get in their head? What knowledge are you trying to share with them going into a big fight?
Well, first of all, sorry guys, I have internet problems here. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Maine.
It's all
Beautiful
good.
place, but internet doesn't work pretty well here. Well, I don't know what the other coaches said, but discipline is definitely the number one thing. I believe that when you're looking for a fighter, you have to have the little, the eye of the tiger, but definitely discipline builds up a lot. When you actually access the fighters and you started making assessment about what do they know, what do they don't know, it is not just about, I think nowadays it changes a lot, because nowadays you have guys learning mixed martial arts as the background, not just, and I believe in our times it was one background. The guy's a wrestler, he has to learn striking, he has to learn jiu-jitsu, and they're engaged in their professional fight career just only one background, and you have to supply knowledge for those other skills. I think now is pretty different. That I believe there is a lot. I retired from coaching, but I believe there is a lot to learn, which is in the schedule. It's something difficult. Because if the guy's a really good wrestler, but he does not know striking, you have to build up confidence in this guy in the striking level. And from that, you got to go through the basics. He got to master the basics of everything. And you have to do it so well that he's not gonna get caught when you go in the expert level. It takes time. It's much harder at our time, I believe, than what it was nowadays. But when you set up a schedule, you find out exactly what the guy needs the most. It's just drilling and, make sure that those guys know what they want in life. If they really want it, they're going to pursue it as much as they can. And there's a couple of schedules that work pretty well. But you have to make sure that those guys really have what it takes to be the professional fighter that want to get there and win. Sometimes winning, sometimes being the champion is even a problem from some, which is some people are shy, don't like the spotlight. Some people want to be the champion, has the talent but they're not equipped mentally to be the champion, because there's much more into this, especially in MMA. MMA is entertainment, which is a lot different than just a sport, So there's a lot of things they combine. The mental aspect too is just so necessary. Don't know how to feel about that, but this is sometimes you have a guy who's not technically or physically skilled, but he's mentally, he overpassed everything. I always give it the example. People don't know this, but I always give it the example of Nogueira, who gave John Hackleman his black belt. Big Nog. So Big Nog is not that. I mean, in the room, he's not that standout guy. I mean, he's not the guy who's going to submit in everybody. He's not the real man. When this guy goes to compete, his level changes, but so much. It was incredible. Incredible. We go through camps and you worry about his performance in camp. But when he goes to compete, this guy was an animal. It was different. This, for me, was the most differentiated guy, because he really was at this level here in the room and during the camp. And during the competition, he was right here. It was tremendous. And it was all mental. It was incredible to see. I guarantee some of you coaches saw this also. Yeah.
Well, so what I'm hearing from everybody is discipline, instilling the confidence, and making sure that they have the work ethic. It sounds like those three things are really the keys to people's success. So we've got a question from a viewer, and I want to put this up here and let everybody answer this question. It'd probably be a short, quick answer. So let's see if it comes up here. This is from Gabby, and Gabby says, is it too late to start adults in their 20s and 30s? And I guess that question could be like specifically about martial arts, or maybe it's about martial arts competition or becoming a fighter, but answer it how you will. But what do you think, Robby Beard? Is it too late to start adults in their 20s and 30s?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No. Matter of fact, to really be proficient, in my opinion, takes some maturity anyway, honestly. So, don't get me wrong, the youth has a lot of the strength and the endurance, which is very important. But for me personally, I felt like I was a better fighter at 32 years old than I was at 22 years old. That's for sure. Now, when I hit 52 years old, things started kind of shuffling down a little bit. But no, absolutely not, man. I think 20s and 30s is a perfect age to really get involved.
Pat, can you answer that question?
I think any age is the right age. It just depends on, again, if that spark, happens. The first time I walked into the kickboxing karate gym, I had boxed and wrestled my entire life, played football, but I was still a little bit nervous because I just wasn't familiar with martial arts and kickboxing when I walked in there. So you can imagine just the average adult or anybody, who's never done any combative sports at all, walking into a martial arts gym. It's terrifying probably for most people. But what they end up finding out, if it's the right gym, which most gyms are the right gyms because there's good people running martial arts schools, is that everybody's very helpful. They're not trying to hurt you, all those sort of things that I try to relay to people and send people to the right gyms, depending on the area, that you're going to be okay, that people are going to take care of you and help you, and you're going to learn a lot. That's the most important thing. And what in America, we've got a big problem is that by the time people are in their 30s and 40s, they're so severely out of shape and so malnourished. People don't understand that we're calorically stuffed and nutritionally starved, right? Our food is, our soil is so wrecked and our food is so bad that people's bodies have fallen apart by the time they're 30, 40, whatever. So it's important to do research on antioxidants, true organics, all those sort of things, and find your food that's going to rebuild your body so that you're able to do this stuff into your 50s, 60s, 70s, and so that's super important for people to understand in America. That we've got a severe nutritional deficiency issue going on in this country, and a lot of people just don't have the motivation to do anything. And so, fix your diet, find the antioxidants that are going to fix your body, your cellular, mitochondrial function, fix your gut biome, all those sort of things, and then you can do anything you want into almost whatever age you want.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great answer. Thank you. What do you think, John? Is it too late to start adults in their 20s and 30s?
And this guy, who is he? Where's Pat Miletich? What have you done with Pat Miletich? I remember that he's like a little wrestler guy that's like the toughest guy in any room, anytime. Now he's a fucking he's like a educational wizard over here. But yeah, how much time do you spend studying stuff? You're like,
well, here's the thing.
You're so well read now. Where's the old school Miletich fighting systems? Now you're like a professor.
Well, here's the thing, John, is a lot of people don't know that I suffered from respiratory disease and other issues my entire childhood into my early 20s. So I was wrestling, suffocating every wrestling match. I had to train twice as hard as everybody just to be able to get on the podium at the state tournament in Iowa, things like that. So I finally decided to do research when I was going to turn professional in kickboxing, because I realized that I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe my entire life, and I was going to get severely injured if I didn't fix it. So I did a lot of research, figured out what antioxidants and organics would remove the synthetic chemicals and heavy metals and all the garbage out of my cells and remove the inflammation that was causing my respiratory disease. And once I did that,
What was it?
I went from sparring 3 to 4 rounds with world-class boxers to 10 to 12 rounds, literally in 10 days. And so once I discovered that, then I started using that formula for all my athletes, and that's why we could stand on the gas pedal in fights and run everybody out of gas. And so something that I've researched obviously for 35 years, and I realized that creating superhumans was the exact same formula as assisting people who are suffering from disease to become healthy.
See, Lebo? See, he was cheating all along. No wonder all these guys beat our guys. You were doing something behind them. Why didn't we know that stuff, Lebo?
It's funny because
we were trying so hard to be able to figure out how to beat you, one of your guys. But you had this whole, you were reading the books and everything. That's cheating, brother.
I had a lot of people ask me what my athletes were on, and I said, "You'll never find out, brother. You're never gonna know."
All right, well, John. So, John, what's your answer to the question on starting adults in their 20s and 30s?
Okay, it's funny because I have a girl named Gabby that's a pro fighter. She came to me when she was in her late 20s, and I just helped her. Went down to the recruiting station. She's had 6 fights. She decided she didn't want to fight anymore. She wants to join the Army, so she just joined, and she's going for she's going for Special Forces, Airborne, and she's 30 years old now, and she'll be leaving next week. And Tim Kennedy was a big help. But what I would tell someone is it's never too late. Unless you want to be a UFC fighter, then 20s, okay. I think if you're starting in the 30s, maybe that might be a little late to make it to UFC. But if you're really that, set on it, then try it anyway and see where it goes. It's better to, regret, is better than, you know what. So it's you should give it a shot no matter what, if you really want to do that, if it's in your heart. But I want it to be a realistic, and I tell them, 30 start. You could get smokers, amateur fights. You might even make it as a pro. It's a little late to start in your 30s if you think you're going to make it to the level of the UFC. But I've had guys 40 in mid 40s that just want to have that one fight. So I'll have them train, and then I'll put them in a smoker, or an amateur fight, and then at least they can tell their grandkids, oh, back in the day, I used to be a fighter. I stepped in that ring, or I stepped in that cage, and they'll never be 60, my age, and regret that they never did try it. So I would say try it anyway. But if you're 30, don't give up your day job if you're supporting kids, thinking you're going to go step right into the UFC.
Yeah. Sounds good.
I want to be a little pragmatic. I want to give them, give them hope, but I also want to give them some reality.
Of course. Absolutely. Mr. Liborio, what do you think? What's your answer? Starting adults in their 20s and 30s.
I definitely go with John in this one. I believe, number one, the question is if it's too late to start adult in the 20s and 30s. It doesn't really specify if he's a professional fighter or not.
Right.
If it's just for you to start any type of martial arts, gosh, definitely. Anything's better than a couch. Anything. We'll start something tomorrow is better than to never start or really never try. So answer the question, if it is for somebody who's a regular human being just trying to get health or his life in order, definitely. There was no age for it. 7 years old. We have a student as there is even sometimes 7 years old competing. But the game changed it for UFC title contention. It would be starting in the 20s or even earlier than that to achieve something like this in the 30s. In our time, it was a little bit earlier than that. But a lot of those guys, they come from a background in competition. Like, for example, wrestlers in one point, after you're a senior in NCAA, that you have to decide what you want to do, or you're going to find a job, or you still have a chance to competing and then go in the highest level of the UFC. Those guys are in the middle 20s. And a lot of those guys have that extreme background in professional and high performance. So for the guy like this jumping in the 30s, being competing for a title contention, definitely 100%. Well, you have somebody like Brock Lesnar, 30-something years old. Brock Lesnar was a UFC champion. This guy never started anything, but look at his background. It was not just an athlete; it was a legit wrestler, pro wrestler, and all this thing combined. So the question itself is a little bit broad, but if you are not doing anything with your life right now, do not be scared of martial arts. Don't be scared. Just look for the right place. And of course, if you go to a high performance center, during some times, crazy for you to step with the pro fighters. It's not like Pat said, you gotta weed it out. People that don't know much, even if they have the desire to do it, they have to have certain level of skills. But if you want to start martial arts, you go to the right place and people that welcome you and make you feel like you belong to it, and make a safe path for you. But I believe that the game changed it a lot, because more and more schools are starting a background in mixed martial arts. So you're learning a lot. In a class of a mixed martial arts nowadays, you're learning everything. You're learning all the striking and all the takedowns, all the ground that's necessary for you to have that base, which is in our time was a guy knew a jiu-jitsu, a guy knew striking, a guy knew wrestler. Rarely you're going to find out Pat Miletich that knew it, striking and the wrestling, and he combined it and he went after jiu-jitsu. All those things, man, that's extremely important. But it's just the question was very broad in it, but
Yeah.
do something with your life. Don't be afraid to step into martial arts, which is something that stopped people a lot. People are afraid to step into martial arts schools, you know.
I love everybody's answers, and it was a broad question, but I think everybody answered that really well in every aspect. So thank you guys for that. So we're kind of right here in the towards the middle to end, and this is where I like to let all of the guests on the show ask their own question to the panel. So everybody will get to ask everybody a question. Just keep our answers, again, short, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, so everybody can get around. And if you are watching live and you have any other questions, please go ahead and post those, and I'll make sure to try to ask before we finish. So, Robby Beard, do you have a question for all of the panel members?
Yes, but let me pass. Let me think about how I want to word it.
Okay. All right. How about Pat? You want to ask Can you ask a question to all the panel members?
Gosh, you're throwing a curveball here.
I like to do that.
What's the scariest moment you've ever had in the street?
John, what's your scariest moment? You've told me about a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Scariest. But there was a lot back in the days, back in Hawaii. There was like whenever I walked by a group of people and I heard either if they were locals and I heard fucking howley, I knew they were talking about me because I had long blonde hair. So I used to always think, oh shit. And then if there's a bunch of Samoans, if I heard, fucking Palangi, I knew they were talking about me. I think, please, just don't bother me. Mm-hmm. But I think I was gonna go see a movie once with my girlfriend at the time, and we were waiting with the theater. I think it was Jaws or something. Jaws. It might have been Jaws. And we're waiting in the theater, the Waikiki Theater, and I'm in the back of the line. I'm with my girlfriend, and this big. I'm probably like 15 years old, 147 pounds because I fought welterweight. And some big Samoan came up to me. And he looked right at me, and I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." And I was already a Golden Glove boxer, and I knew how to fight. But this guy was like twice my size, and I was thinking, and my girlfriend's right there, and I was so scared for that second. And I look back. Of course, I gotta play it like I'm not scared. So I look back at him, and I just kind of like, and he goes, "Hey, you John Hackleman, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh yeah, you don't have to wait in line." He was a security guy for the movie theater, and he took me to the front of the line. So I was really scared, but then I felt really like, oh man, so my girlfriend saw that, so it turned into a positive. Is that good? Was that a good one?
It's a good one.
And I had one at the Sagebrush Cantina too, but that was just a fight that I, got into. But anyway, that was probably one of the ones that sticks out in my mind the most.
All right, Mr. Liborio, tell us your scariest moment in the street.
It's hard, guys. I'm from Brazil, so I got robbed 5 times, and we had 5 cars robbed, 5 cars in Rio. This is insane. But one was at a gunpoint. One it was just I couldn't stop on the red light, and the gun was right here in your head, and there's nothing you can do. There's nothing that the feeling that you have it of nothing, of no way, shape, and form. I could not react to it, especially because I did not have a gun. But even if I had it, because they check for guns in you, and I just say, just take it. Don't worry about anything. Just leave it over there. Even the wallet, my wallet was in a dashboard. Say, just leave it. Just go ahead, and I guess it was a good decision because I'm still alive. But I have seen some crazy stuff. Yeah. I don't try to be the macho. Don't try to be. Everything is replaceable, but my life is not. And a lot of those guys don't care much about it. Life is cheap in some places.
Well, I knew that I knew John had some experiences growing up in Hawaii, and you had yours in Brazil. And Mr. Beard, I know that you're a police officer for a time, so it might have something to do with that. But what's your answer to that? What's your scariest situation in the street?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you said that because I live in Memphis, so just going to the mailbox is scary for me. Right? Just doing that. But no, really, probably my scariest thing was as a police officer. I got a call for shots fired call, and I pull up to the address and I don't hear anything, and I'm going to the backyard, and I just hear pink off this. I'm at a fence, and I'm looking over the fence, trying to see, trying to just figure out what's going on, and all of a sudden, pink. I'm like, what is that noise? And it's like something's hitting the fence, and they make a long story short, it was bullets that were hitting the fence, and then somebody was shooting them. They had a silencer on their gun, and I was just a little frozen time because you always think you always think you're gonna know what you're gonna do, and then you're in this situation. Obviously, I didn't freeze that much. I hit the deck, but my point is like you get locked down a little bit, and that's probably the scariest moment. For my life and death situation, having somebody shooting at, and then I had to pull my weapon and defend myself. Which if you make one mistake, it's over. It's not there's no bell ringing and there's no, okay, we'll fight next weekend. It's over. And that was definitely by far the scariest time of my life. But, but in the street fight situation, like Lebo says, man, I'm going to do my best to not be in those situations. But I have, funny talking about martial artists, Roland Osborne came and visited me one time in Memphis. We went downtown, and Memphis officer got jumped in the street, and I had to go out there, and there was about 7 guys against one dude. So, I had to jump in there, and even Roland Osborne was like, "That was craziest stuff I've seen, man." But so I've been in a few unfortunate situations, but the scariest one is definitely involves the bullets flying for sure.
Crazy days in Memphis.
Crazy.
Hey, so let's move on and let Robby. Do you have your question formulated in your head? You want to ask everybody?
Yeah, I was gonna just kind of maybe ask, what is the biggest change? Because I probably got into the MMA side of things. Obviously, I know I did way past you guys, right? And I've seen such a huge change in MMA myself, over the last 20 years. And I'm just like, what do you guys think would maybe be, what's like the biggest difference? Like if you were coaching someone, 20 years ago or whatever, and coaching someone now, how do you see the game as being so much different in the ring as far as skill levels or whatever you think it may be? What do you think some of the biggest changes that you have seen in the fight game over the years? How's it changed?
Yeah. What do you think, Lebo?
What I think, like I said, I think people start younger with a more complete background, which is give them way more skills than when you have one background to learn everything else. It's going to influence in your schedule. And the schedule, guys, you have so much time in the day to get your conditioning and get your drills. And you have to learn a lot. When you have to learn a lot, starting from basics, it's a lot of repetition. You have to include this in your schedule. And when you start it young and mix in martial arts and you're doing everything complete, because there is a big ground. I'm giving a good example is this. One of the most talent, I guess I can say that the most talent physically athlete that I really worked with was Yoel Romero. A stud, guys. Rarely, I never saw something like tremendous. But he was learning the striking, was not really an expert on the striking. And the groundwork, it was zero. But when he started learning the striking, which is really good, he learned it so fast. He got some background in boxing. He started not utilizing his wrestling. So there is the gap of shortening the distance and using his wrestling. And he was not doing this. So for a while, he was getting takedown for it because he was just doing striking at one point and not putting it all together. So when he started really actually shortening the gap and utilizing his wrestling and combining level, distance, and and the takedowns with the striking, things got even much better for him. But sometimes, if you do not have certain background, you gotta have to learn it. And if you're as much as you get, you go on a great expert in Muay Thai, but this guy does not know MMA. He's not very aware of the takedowns that can come from there, you know, or the defenses that come. So nowadays, I truly believe that kids are learning from young age all these gaps, closing everything with taking this to a different level. You know, from techniques too. What techniques that work from the ground in MMA, or techniques that you see the way more of karate kicks, for example, or taekwondo kicks that before was very rarely to see it because everybody was so prompt to take them down at the same time. But nowadays, not. The guy, rarely you see the guy throwing a very fancy kick, but he knows how to defend it, to take down right away. So I think the younger age and the structure of the classes really got the level in mixed and martial arts, a real mixed and martial arts, in a different, different plateau, and a different pattern right now.
Yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
I think.
For sure. What do you think, John? What's the biggest difference if you were to train a fighter 20 years ago versus training a fighter now? What's the biggest difference?
I think I would train them the same, but I would assume, especially if it's a lower level fight where you don't have a lot of film on the opponent, I would assume that everybody now is at least somewhat skilled. There's still, like Lebo was saying, there's everybody knows everything now, but there's still, most people have a specialty or maybe two. Most people favor one more than the other. Some people are better at one than the others. So I would watch out for that going into a lower end match where, like I said, if I didn't know the guy, I'm going to assume that he knows something about everything now, because most people do. But unless I've seen him, then I can focus on what his strengths and weaknesses would be. But I think it would be just be the fact that it's a new age now, a new era, especially in Hawaii, because Hawaii is just crazy. Everybody can fight in Hawaii. It's just like you go to grade school, schoolyard, and you watch two guys fighting in third grade. Man, they're scrapping and going in for a double, and they might even be going in for a single, and so it's just a different mentality. But so that's my long short answer to a long. Well, it was a long answer. Should have been short, but you get it.
You both agreed with the same point that people now are more well versed in all aspects of MMA versus in the early years where you had simply the style versus style mentality, right? And so great answers, good answers. Last question, unless we're trying to get Pat back on here. Mr. Liborio, do you have a question for the panel members?
I would ask, what would you change in the sport of mixed and martial arts today?
What would you change, John?
Wow, that is such a good question. Man, okay. I would take out takedowns. There's no Lebo. I wanted that one was for Lebo. Lebo.
He's back.
Did you hear my answer?
I'm here.
Okay, what would I change? I would take out takedowns. I would make it illegal. No, I'm joking. I wouldn't. That, to be honest, right now, the way the UFC is going and just everything, there's really nothing. There's some rules I think are stupid. 12-6 this, and back of the head that. There's some small joint manipulation, and can't kick a downed opponent. So there's some rules that little rules that I've changed, but overall, I am so happy with. I started in Kaji Kempo, and Kaji Kempo is a martial arts started in Hawaii with karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, kempo, and boxing.
Mhm.
So it was a little bit of everything. Way different than the sport of MMA, but there was everything in that martial art. So to watch martial art evolving the way it has, and being I started in 1970 in Kaji Kempo. I love MMA. It's my favorite sport, and I think it's a great activity. And right now, I would keep it just the way it is.
Robbie, would you change anything?
No, I was sitting here the whole time that John's talking, and I'm thinking, not really, and that may just because maybe I haven't thought about it, but I agree. I think I like it. So no, nothing on my end.
All right. You know what? Actually, John, I don't think you got to ask the question.
What would you change?
What would I change?
Yeah. If you changed anything, would you change?
I would allow groin kicks.
Groin.
That's so weird that you said that to a bunch of guys, because I don't understand why are groin kicks illegal. I know why they're illegal for men, but why do they bring that over to women too? Just because it's the dumb. That's got to be the dumbest rule in MMA right now. 12-6 elbows and groin kicks on girls.
When I was competing, I would never go to a tournament where I couldn't use a groin kick. And in Krav Maga, like, groin kick is our number one go-to strike. So I understand why it's not there, but if I would change anything, I would allow it. Wouldn't that would change the game a lot?
Not really. Not with cups. Not really. They would just, they would come up with better cups.
That's what I thought.
Steel.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then pretty soon, the way they come around, because it doesn't matter how hard the cup is, because sometimes a little bit of you gets in between the cup and your leg, and that, oh shit, you guys know how much that hurts. But if they could somehow encompass and then make it, then a groin kick would be no big deal. But anyway,
doesn't matter. All right, what's your question, John?
Question for the
You got two people left to ask questions. I think Pat ducked out.
Okay. If what do you think would be the one most? What's the X factor in martial arts?
Libo.
The factor in martial arts, period, I guess. Define X factor for me. That's just to make
like to me, the final advantage is conditioning, because you have to, when that goes, you're like a car on the side of the road with no gas. Nothing you can do. Once the gas goes, that's the final advantage that you just lost. You'll never win. But what's the X factor? Something that you can just out of the blue, you can just bring in at any time and change the whole course of the fight. Like that.
I honestly have to say that is discipline. Honestly, I think everything with a really measured discipline, you can change. You definitely can change everything.
Wow.
Go anywhere. You
Never thought of that.
You can have a lot of for you to get a stamina. Some guys have the prompt. You know this. They have the right mind. They have great stamina because it's a natural things. But if this person is not disciplined, man, it's rare. It's rare to keep yourself there. You can have guys that we know, John, talent human beings, extremely talented guys that can go so far, and you know that this guy is not going to really make the leap just because discipline, because he finds excuses because he does not come back in the next day, because he has his own demons. And for your own demons, discipline is the medicine. Discipline is the medicine for your own, for your own ghosts, your own nightmares, things that you think that you find it to create an excuse of not to go or not to do this or that, or, to fail. And discipline cures it all, in my opinion. So you build up discipline. It's something that it takes a while. It hurts. It's not fun. For many times you doubt, because that's why you're doing this, but you're so caught up in discipline that you're just going to see it in the future.
Well, so when you asked that question, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. John, when you asked that question, that was the first word that came to my mind, because it's been sticking in my head, throughout the conversation, was discipline. But then I started thinking about it a little bit more, like for the success of, a fighter in the UFC, and I think for the success of, I think of like the WWE or performers in general, as someone said about performance, when you're in that limelight, a personality could be an X factor. You got someone that can't talk on the mic at all. You got someone that can't do interviews. You got someone that, can't go out and promote. That could really change. We've seen fighters in the UFC, and we've seen people in situations where that personality is what kind of got them to the next level too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, you guys both gave me something to think about, because I never even thought of either one of those two for the X Factor, but they're great.
What do you think
about you, Rob?
I agree. I agree. Those are great answers. I think I throw in mindset. It's like, when John said about fitness, I thought, man, that is the X factor, is being in shape enough to do it. I like that. But I thought, man, mindset too, because everybody's a badass, right? Until they get punched in the nose. But we all heard that saying before. But if you get punched in the nose, my mindset is, oh, awesome, now it's my turn. Right. So some people's mindset might be, oh, wait, stop, hold on, let me, but my mindset is, let's go to the next, it's my turn now. And I get excited about that instead of depressed. But so I think the X factor for martial artists need to be how they're, what they're allowing in their brain, which ties back into discipline, right? But what do they think about if they're down around? If they're down around, what do they think about? If they're having a problem, what are they thinking about, right? And I think if you can train yourself to have the right proper thoughts when you're being defeated, hypothetically, then that can help you be successful. I've seen it. I've seen people who really shouldn't have won a fight, shouldn't have won that fight. They were losing all rounds, and yet for some reason in their mind they were determined to finish, and not only finish but to win, and they did it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, not to drag it out, but mindset.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because I was reading my daily John Maxwell daily reader. That's what I read every morning, and the passage today was to think about the big picture, and it was talking about I forget his name, but from a different country representing his country in the Olympics. And, everybody had finished this race, right? Everybody finished a marathon. And a little while after everybody had finished, there was one person who came around, and everybody stuck around and watched him as he finished this race. And he's limping across the finish line with a bandage around his leg. And they said, the race has been over for a while. What made you finish? And he said, my country sent me here to finish the race, not just to run in it. And so I just thought I'd tie that in. I thought that was a really powerful message. So, hey guys, listen, we're right here at the end of the time, and there's one question on the board that someone left here. One name? Who do you look to the most for inspiration? If there's one, can you name one person that inspires you, Mr. Liborio?
Oh, I'm going to ask to pass. I'm just going to answer the door. Somebody's knocking on the door here. I'm going to ask John. John.
What?
Go ahead, John. Why don't you answer the question? Who do you look to most for inspiration?
Oh, shoot. Inspiration. You know what? And this is a backhand. This is a weird one, but my instructor, he's been dead for 30 years, almost 30 years. But I always think, coming up, I always want to be like him since I was 10 years old. And then, so when I'm doing even all my fights, I want to be like him, even though he never actually fought a sport, but I always thought of how would he do it? What would he do? You know, and then now it is, even though I have to filter it through a more morally, through a better moral compass. I have to, I have to filter it through that. But at the end of the day, probably all other things considered, I just think, how would he have done it? Weird answer, but
Lebo, you want to answer? Who do you look for the most for inspiration?
For the inspiration is when I really started. The guy who really actually inspired me forever, it was Carlson Gracie. Carlson was a great mentor. He was a great flame of inspiration for all of us. I think my career, when I decided to move, not just to US, but really, I used to work in a bank, guys. I had a business. I got a degree in business administration, and I never used it. I really never was good at it. My whole inspiration came from Carlson, and I decided to be close to what he was, because that's something that has so much passion. And I can feel the passion. I drew into it. This was something that I knew what I was going to do it. And at COVID times is really was a time that it made you think, man, what happened here? We're with the chance of the schools closing. I know John has a lot of stories to tell about this on the roof and everything. Ask him to tell the story later. But but it makes you think about it. Man, did I make the right decision? I knew it right away. Knew it that I made the right decision from that inspiration that Carlson Gracie installed in on us. It was just not me. I was going to say me, but it was on all of us. You see, a lot of guys decide to take that career and were very successful, even in the world of mixed martial arts, because this guy inspires us, And I'm finding some inspiration in the Bible too, guys. Believe it or not, I've been reading the Bible, and there was some very interesting things there. So there's a lot of inspiration, and the moral compass is really strong from that one side.
I love it. Thank you, Robby. Last one to answer, and then we're going to close out for the day. Who do you look to most for inspiration?
Well, it probably depends on what areas of life, but as far as this podcast, as awkward as this is, Ricardo Liborio. I mean, he's my coach, and it's just the truth, man. It's the truth, but I want to explain kind of why. Like, I came up as a striker, as a karate guy, and won tournaments, and 5-time karate champion, blah blah blah. And I went down to American Top Team to train, and didn't know who Liborio was. I didn't go down there to train. I actually went down there to consult and help the school owner and the gym itself. And I go down there, and it was, jiu-jitsu, whatever. I'm a striker. It's what I'm good at. And I got to meet him, and more importantly, I got to meet him in the cage. And I would tell the story all the time how he just absolutely dominated me. I couldn't believe it. So I said, look, I want to learn this. And I just always was inspired by how he handled me. It's like, he got this cocky guy. At the time, I was much younger, right? But this cocky guy is a karate expert, blah, blah. And he never threw that back in my face. And just the way he coaches people in general, not just me, the way he coaches people, all my students, 1,000 members here, they all love, they can't wait for Liborio to come to town. The way he is with his family, the way he is with his daughter. I mean, I just go on and on. He's just an inspiration for me. And it's who I want to emulate when I'm on the mat. I want my students to look at me the way I look at him. So that's my inspiration for sure.
That's a great answer. And I'll close this out. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to say it, but each one of you inspire me in lots of different ways. But my true answer to who I look to most for inspiration in my life now, it's my kids. Because every time I look at my kids, they make me want to be a better man, a better father, a better martial artist, a better everything. Like, I am their example. And so that inspires me every day to wake up and to be better than I was yesterday. And it sounds a little cliche, but you know, that's the truth for me. But you guys have all truly inspired me in so many ways. That's why you're on the podcast. And I have enjoyed this last hour. And I hope that everybody else watching enjoyed it just as much. And if they didn't, that's okay. It was for us anyway, right? But
Where's Pat? Where's Pat?
Pat took off. I think he had to go, but we'll catch up with him again.
Master
But
Flynn,
listen, guys.
say this. I can say this because I know you three. You know, as I know, they're three friends. Really, three are my friends. People that I consider a lot. You guys really are the top of the top, the creme de la creme. Not just because you're great instructors, not just because of that, or your accomplishments as a competitors, but they're all stand-up guys. They're all great human beings. You know, I just want to say this, and I don't know Pat Miletich as much. You know, I'm a big fan of Pat, really, but I'm really good friends with you three. You guys know this. You know, it's just even easier for me to say this right now because it's, you know, I know you guys well. But I just want to say that you are and when Robby say something like this, Robby's my mentor. You guys know that. Jason, you were my mentor. John, fuck, man, just all those guys that are really, you know, I really admire, and I'm really proud to say you are my friends. So, again, is one more reason that I can say that I did the right thing to do and work with martial arts, which is for some very, very difficult. We're not going to be multi-millionaires. We're not selling, you know, water in the desert or something like this. We're not in the oil industry, but we definitely have this satisfaction to knowing that we did the right thing, you know, for us and for our community. So I just want to say thank you guys. Love you. You guys
Thank you,
know
sir.
this.
Appreciate
It's
you.
easy,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And John, Robby, Ricardo, thank you guys so much for being on the show. I'll catch up with you guys soon. Go have a great rest of the day and a good weekend. All right. We'll see
Take
everybody
care,
real
guys.
soon.
Thank you. All right.
And listen, those of you that watched here live, hey, thanks again. Make sure to go to YouTube and subscribe to Master Motivation Podcast and check out who's coming up next. Check out some of the interviews that we've done in the past. Make it a great day. Thanks.
All right.